top choice was an Ivy, and everybody told him that was completely impossible. But we stayed the course. When he opened that letter, that acceptance letter from his dream school Ivy that everyone had been telling him there was no way he was going to make it into, it was a really powerful moment for him. Hello, and welcome to the Admittedly podcast. My name is Thomas Caleel. I'm the former director of MBA admissions and financial aid for my alma mater, the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. In this podcast, I don't promise easy answers or quick fixes, but I will use my decades of experience to help you achieve your education goals. Now let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the Admittedly podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Caleel, and today I'm going to share some stories about students that I've worked with that have achieved incredible results. They've reached their dream school. In some cases, they've overshot where we thought was even remotely possible. And it's these stories that really make me excited about what I do. And we're going to talk about a lot of things today. A little bit of trigger warning. There are some issues in here that might be a little bit difficult for people to wrestle with. So just be aware of that. Some of my students have had wonderful arcs and tracks. Others have struggled with things and struggled in their life and have had to deal with some hardship. And we're trying to give you a little bit of mix of both, but just talk about their accomplishments. One thing I want to say straight out at the top of this podcast is that I am in no way taking credit for these accomplishments. These students worked hard. They were motivated. I was fortunate enough to be able to be part of the process, to mentor, advise, and guide them. But everything they did. I don't go out and organize things on behalf of my students. I don't go out and do the work. I serve as a guide at Admittedly. All of our counselors are mentors, guides. We walk side by side with these students, but always realizing that it's the students who accomplish these things. And so in no way are we taking credit for it, and in no way do we want to diminish their extraordinary achievements. But let's just jump right in, right? So I had one student, young man, his parents had been very highly educated in India, moved to the Bay Area, and he was very concerned about standing out, right? His pool is very, very deep, very, very competitive. And where he was in Northern California, he was attending a very good and large public high school, really struggling with how to differentiate himself. Goal initially was pre-med. Parents were both engineers, and they were really pushing him towards engineering or pre-med. And so the result of that was that he moved very quickly through the math track, but hit a wall sophomore year, was not doing great, got a B. Junior year was struggling as well, was not testing highly on the SAT, and was feeling very, very discouraged. When we met and I spoke with him, we realized very quickly was that he was not a STEM kid. He just wasn't. And his passion was in the law, and specifically in local government. And this was something that his parents just couldn't get their minds around, right? Because, right, they were engineers. STEM was the way to go as a reliable career track. They didn't understand this whole pre-law track in the US. And because of the B, they had met with some counselors. The counselors were all like, yeah, maybe UC Irvine, maybe if you're lucky, UC San Diego, but really kind of notching him down in terms of potential. And the parents were really upset about this, and he was feeling very discouraged. And so we did a lot of work together initially, just understanding, because he said, well, I really like pre-law. And I said, okay, well, what about the law interests you? And we started talking about city council meetings that he was attending. He was the editor of the school paper, and how he had really fought to educate his classmates and the community that read the paper about why local ordinance, local regulations mattered, and why things that people really overlooked really had an effect on their day-to-day lives. Where something that happened in Washington, D.C. might have a larger impact on the nation, but in terms of day-to-day quality of life and dignity of life, local politics mattered. So what we were able to do in working with the parents to get them to understand the viability of this path, and that that's what their son really, really wanted to do, he leaned into mock trial, which was something he was very, very passionate about. It started a training program for the incoming students, reached out to the local DA's office, ended up getting an internship there and using that as a training ground for mock trial. Also was able to bring in district attorneys to come and train and teach and talk to the mock trial team. Integrated that with their work as head of the school paper, did Yale Young Global Scholars, but then also did work over the summer at law firms and at advocacy groups to really understand the way law was applied. And the concern going into the application season was that there were a few B's on the transcript, and the SAT just didn't break that 1,500 mark. And so there's a lot of concern in terms of where they were going to be. Top choice was an Ivy, and everybody told him that that was completely impossible. But we stayed the course, and he was a little bit discouraged because we did some he got deferred early decision and then got some bad outcomes, some denials and further defers from other schools he was very interested in. And so heading into Ivy Day, there was a lot of discouragement. And when he opened that letter, that acceptance letter from his dream school Ivy that everyone had been telling him there was no way he was going to make it into, it was a really powerful moment for him and really powerful moment for the parents. I remember speaking to the parents, and the father broke down at one point and was just like, look, this was a really hard process. You really pushed our son. He was very uncomfortable at times. You really pushed him to be honest with himself and things that are outside, what we consider like our culture and our family culture, this drive for self-knowledge and self-awareness and happiness, and to watch him evolve into this young man that is now going off to a school that we never thought possible. That was a really powerful moment that this young man had done the work, had dug deep, had found the courage to pursue that thing that he wanted so deeply and so well, and in a way that was unique to him, not just pre-law, but very specifically this idea of local government and covering it and pursuing it and getting involved in it was something that I think really set the stage for him. And he's now at this Ivy. He's doing really incredible work. He is he's researching with professors. He's heavily involved with their pre-law society. And it's something I think this is going to be a person I'm going to keep an eye on, because he's going to be making real changes in his communities and probably in the nation for the rest of his career.
This show is brought to you by Early Edge Plus, Admittedly's flagship coaching program for high-achieving students and their families. At Admittedly, we've built a team of former admissions officers from top schools like Wharton, Duke, Stanford, Yale, Harvard, and University of Chicago. We know what actually gets students into top colleges because we've been in the room making those decisions. If you want that insider perspective, visit admittedly.co/apply. That's admittedly.co/apply to book your free family action call with one of our admissions advisors today.
Next example is a young lady who wanted to go to Vanderbilt. Absolute top choice, journalism major. And this is one of those things where journalism is tricky, right? Because I know a lot of students will pick journalism as a major if they're lost and floundering and trying to do something else, but it's very difficult to prove out an interest in journalism unless you have a working portfolio. And so this young lady was very focused on issues of immigration, social justice, was a member of the mayor's committee in her very large city, youth committee that was looking at issues around immigration, around housing equity, around things that matter deeply to large segments of the community in this city. And she had a Hispanic background. And so when, she was doing a lot of writing for local newspapers, local news outlets, but when summer came, we were trying to find something differentiating. And so she had family in South America. So she went down to South America, found an internship at a large newspaper there, and worked a beat for the summer. And it was something that was deeply meaningful to her because she really got to see, this kind of older style of journalism, of going out, of interviewing people, of talking to them, creating stories, telling their stories, and was able to weave that into a really compelling narrative that matched with Vanderbilt's approach to writing and creativity and storytelling. And it was a very powerful narrative that she was able to really say, listen, this matters to me. I've been involved in it locally. I went and sought this opportunity out internationally because this ties to who I am and my heritage and my background. And it was a very, very unique differentiating point where she wasn't just going through the motions and writing for a local paper, for her local paper. She was doing this writ large and then finding ways to get involved also in online communities. So she wasn't just, writing for a paper, and get her voice heard. And so there was, there's a lot of struggle there. Journalism is a profession right now that is under a lot of fire. And she was able to really kind of stand true to her beliefs and articulate to Vanderbilt why this mattered to her and why she felt it was important. And more importantly, why she felt it was really critical to have that voice and perspective in the Vanderbilt community. And they just absolutely loved it and ate it up. Next student I want to talk about this was a tough one, right? So a student, young lady at boarding school. And boarding schools are hard, and I've talked about this on my podcast, earlier podcast episode, so I'd urge you to go look at that. Boarding schools are hard because you're very limited in what you're able to do, right? There's not a lot of free time. You have athletic requirements and other requirements, and you really have to be creative to break out of that. And so when I met this young lady, she was very interested in what she thought at the time was international relations. And we're like, okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about what that means to you. And a lot of it was around balancing legislative tensions. So this student was from Hong Kong and was really trying to figure out, okay, how do I look at politics, in a region that has a lot of dynamics, a lot of tensions, a lot of longstanding friendships, relationships. How do I balance economic prosperity and social harmony and stability? And so we spent a lot of time talking about that. And what we realized is that the international component was very important in terms of bridging relationships. And so one of the things that she did was start reaching out to politicians that she found that she admired in the US and approaching them and saying, hey, listen, I really like the work you're doing here. I would like to learn how legislation is made and lobbied and passed. Can I intern for you? And she heard a lot of no's. But she did locate one politician, it was one state senator who was willing to take her under her wing. And she earned over time this opportunity to really dig deep and produce meaningful legislative briefs for this state senator to the point where she actually was submitting some of these briefs to the United Nations, and several of them were adopted into their library as white papers because they were so nuanced and so unique and provided this very meaningful kind of dialogue and understanding of how laws are made, how feedback is integrated, how negotiation happens. And it was something that really kind of spoke to her. So when she applied to Stanford as this international relations major, she had something very unique that was unique to her background and also to her forward interests, and that resonated. And she is very happily up in Palo Alto right now. Want to also, I want to take a little bit of a little bit harder turn here, and so there is a trigger warning here that we're dealing with some issues around violence. But had a student who suffered just a terrible assault when he was in middle school, was assaulted and really had a lot of trauma around that and did a lot of hard work to process that, learn from it, and grow from it. And what he realized during that process as he entered high school was that there were a lot of his fellow students around the country facing a very similar experience. And he felt like they didn't have a voice. And a lot of them told him, hey, we don't have a voice. We have no outlet. We have nobody we can share this with outside of this very narrow banded therapy window. And so he started reaching out to experts in the field, built a board, built this nonprofit. And I know I talk a lot about don't start a nonprofit. there's always a caveat unless you do it right. And so this young man really did it right. And he put together a board of experts, but then reached out and invited students from around the United States and even some internationally to join. And his focus was not like, I need to be the president, I need to be the co-founder so this looks good on a resume. This was something he genuinely cared about. And it was something where he was able to tie in with these experts, raise real money from large national organizations and tie up with them as well. So these were large organizations focused on the problem that said, hey, you really speak to young people on this. And so let's pause a minute and bring you in so that you can speak to our younger audience and educate us on what we're missing for high school students. Was able to build this immensely compelling organization that still thrives to this day. And in applying to their top Ivy choice, there was a lot of hesitation. Like, do we talk about this? Do we not talk about this? And the reality is, and I said, look, this is immensely painful, but you do need to talk about it. And you've spoken about it on a national stage, you've spoken about it in the press, but now it's time to talk about it in an application, not in a way that you're trying to elicit sympathy, right? But in a way that you are able to share this experience. We're going to focus not on the trauma. We're going to touch on the trauma, just lightly, and then dig into why you did what you did. It was immensely successful. He received a lot of scholarships around what he was able to do and is continuing his work at this Ivy, just absolutely crushing it and really now looking at, okay, how do I now navigate, how do I shift into like political science and advocacy and figure out how to do this in a more legislative fashion to protect vulnerable people in society. So I thought that was a very, very interesting opportunity. Another example here is a young man who was very interested in business, particularly the Huntsman program. Spoke fluent Japanese, very, very interesting, very involved, but really hadn't done anything particularly unique. And so the question here was, okay, like, how do we craft something different? So we started talking. I had met him somewhat late in junior year, about this time around March. And, he said, well, I've got this opportunity in Japan. I'm going to go do home stay and study Japanese over the summer. And I was like, yeah, I mean, great, but that's only a couple week program. What else are you doing? He's like, I really don't know. So I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's the names of some friends of mine who are in Tokyo. I want you to reach out to them. You can use my name, but I'm not going to lobby them. You need to do this on your own. And several of them are in real estate, and see what you can do. He was so impressive that he was able to secure for himself several internships in the real estate industry in Tokyo. And they all said to him, listen, we speak Japanese here, so we're not going to accommodate you. You need to keep up. And he was like, absolutely. So he said, I'm going to spend the next couple months studying my business Japanese so I can hit the ground running. And for those of you who know Japanese work culture, it is 24/7, 365. There's no let up. It's super intense. And he went and just absolutely put his head down, rolled his sleeves up, no ego, worked, finished up his internships, did his homestay, and was able to really kind of take from that into his Huntsman application, this idea of, I really realized I love real estate and I love the Japanese market. And I think here's my vision for it. Here's how I see this coming together. Here's things I did well. Here are some things I really struggled with. But this particular aspect of Huntsman is going to help me learn about that and overcome that. It was a very powerful learning arc. And he did such a good job that the first summer he was there, he had multiple offers to return and intern at these Japanese companies, which is unprecedented and unheard of.
Academic performance and test scores have become increasingly important in today's admissions landscape. That's why Admittedly has partnered with Advantage Testing, the nation's #1 private tutoring company. For nearly 40 years, their Ivy League tutors have helped students perform their very best. Help your student get an advantage and learn more at admittedly.co/testing. That's admittedly.co/testing.
So what I'm getting at here, and I get a lot of questions when I do things like I do these ranking videos, right? Everybody, they like them. Rate business activities. And I'll be like 2 of 10 if this and 8 of 10 if this. And what I really want to stress here is that when you look at what these students have done to accomplish their goals, they're doing things that in some cases are available to anybody, right? But they're doing them in a way that is unique to them. They are taking something and they are making a difference. So you want to start a nonprofit? Okay, I don't advise doing it unless you really, really that's your focus. That's what you do. You treat it seriously. You get yourself out there. You put yourself on a line. You hear no a lot. You have the courage to reach out to people, to organize, to bring in other students, to not have ego, to say, hey, this person knows more about this than I do, and I am going to step back and let them own that process. Or, I want to be involved in journalism. So I can't just do what's expected. I can't just do a couple summer courses and call it quits. I need to find that aspect of journalism, which in this case was immigrants' rights, and really lean in and find opportunities to make a difference and scrap and push and ask and fail and have the courage to lean into that and take risks, right? How do we take risks? By telling our parents, hey, mom and dad, I'm not interested in being an engineer or a doctor. I want to be pre-law. I want to focus on something you don't think is glamorous, which is local politics. But look, I love being editor of the paper. I love writing about this. I love figuring out this internship at the DA's office and getting to sit in on depositions and talk to clients and review files. These are really important things that differentiate you from the students that are going through the motions and the students that are going above and beyond. And this is a lot of the work that we do with students because it's very hard a lot of times for students to understand what the competitive set looks like. And a lot of times when I'm approached by parents, they're like, oh, my child is fantastic. And you know what? I'm a parent. I love my kids. I think they are amazing and fantastic. But what most parents lack, and this is not a criticism, is an understanding of the broader pool, how competitive the broader pool is. And we get this a lot of times in Admittedly. We have these Ask Admittedly office hours for our students. And what's great is we get a couple hundred people in there. And our students start to realize, oh my gosh, these things that I think that I'm doing well, now I understand why my counselor is pushing me to go beyond, because there were 10 or 20 other people just in this Ask Admittedly that have the same interest. So how am I differentiating myself? And it's really important to remember that differentiating yourself is not about money. It is about hustle and it is about grit. It is about taking an opportunity and being relentless and being unafraid to hear the word no. And that's what universities are looking for, right? Because when you get to a university, without fail, when I send students, when I help students get to top Ivies, for example, I get a call or email in the fall and they're like, oh my God, Thomas, help. I don't know what to do. Like I'm trying to join clubs and everybody has an application process and I need a resume and it's so competitive. And I'm like, yeah. You're in a school full of overachievers. You have to fight, scrap, and earn your spot. And that's what it's going to be like for your career, because things that are worthwhile are hard and they require effort and hard work. And so if you want to start a business, if you want to be an engineer, if you want to be a politician, a teacher, whatever it is, you have to fight for that. You need to have that fire. And so a lot of the work that we do with these students is helping them embrace that, to unlock that. And a lot of times they have it already innately. And so sometimes it's about directing it. But the message here is that you can achieve exceptional things. It requires courage. It requires planning. It requires thoughtfulness. It requires a lot of times divesting things that do not speak to you. And for those of you who are regular listeners to the podcast, I talk about this all the time. This is not news to you, but it's very, very important, because what it does is it tells the universities, this is somebody who won't take no for an answer. This is somebody who is curious. They're not afraid of failure, because failure happens all the time. If you're pushing yourself, you are failing. And if you are not failing, it means you're not pushing yourself hard enough. So that is what these universities are looking for. I'm going to talk a lot more about examples of other students because I love this. I love these students. So stay tuned to the podcast. For those of you following me on YouTube, thank you so much. Please, if you would, subscribe. It means a lot to me and to us here at Admittedly, but it also means you're not going to miss great content going forward. Follow us on our Instagram and TikTok at AdmittedlyCo. That's at AdmittedlyCo. I am in the comments. I am in the DMs. I love interacting with you, and I really look forward to hearing from you. You can also visit our website, www.admittedly.co. That's www.admittedly.co. We want to talk to you. We want to hear from you. What's on your mind? What are you thinking about? If you think that our methods can help you, I invite you to book a free family strategy call. You can see that on our website. That's admittedly.co/apply, and see if our method works for you. Thank you so much for listening and following. There's a lot more coming as we kick off this new admissions cycle, so stay tuned. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Please take a moment to subscribe to the Admittedly podcast and download this episode. I welcome you to share your thoughts and questions with me. You can find us on social media at Admittedly Podcast. I look forward